Here begins the second part of my Pencast conversation with Gerassimos Thomas, Director General of the European Commission's Taxation and Customs Union Directorate and one of the leading thinkers and actors in the process of EU customs reform. In this case, they would have one data repository, as you say, and one authority to deal with. That's going to streamline a lot of people's lives. How would you say the EU customs reform process is going? Some customs insiders I've spoken with have observed that although simplification of customs procedures has been widely requested for years, matters have become more complex and legislation has multiplied. How does the process toward simplification going in your view?
Well, this is a big reform for this administration that we are talking about. This is not an upgrade of an existing, let's say, legal system. It's a fundamental reform. We envisage that it will need a couple of years for this to be agreed and a couple of years to be implemented. Last year, we had ministers of finance debating the need of this reform twice. This shows the importance that the ministers give to this issue and broadly supporting this idea for a reform. And now the experts go through the different details. This is a customs administration. It's subject to certain international rules. The legacy systems, to change them requires a change management. Let's say, both from the human resources point of view, but also from the procedural point of view, it requires some time. So I think now going down to deciding the operational and legal aspects of the reform, it is normal that it takes a year and a half or 2 years. All presidencies in the EU, like the Spanish, the Belgian, the Hungarian presidency, sees as a very important priority, and therefore they devote a lot of time. Every week there is a meeting to go through the nitty-gritty to see what exactly it will change in the process. We need to have a process that it is very clear so that we can switch from the current system to a new system when the details are known. There is a significant simplification of the customs processes per se. Just to give you an example, at the moment, and traditionally over the 150 years, customs work on a consignment base. Every time that you have a consignment crossing the border, you need to look at it and you need to decide the customs tariffs, to decide if it goes in or out. Then you need to release for circulation. So this, particularly with e-commerce, makes it, or big trade, it makes it very cumbersome. You stop things at consignment level. So one major simplification of this reform is that when you have trusted traders, which is expected to, let's say, to handle about 80% of our trade, you don't look at consignment. You look at that the traders have a system in place, the so-called system-based approach. By things go in, you do not collect customs duties consignment by consignment, but you have a system, so things go through and you audit the system, so to speak, and you have ex-post control. And of course, you can fine the trusted traders if they do not observe the rules, but you don't need for every package or a consignment who comes in to check. It is something also that the British are doing. This trusted traders regime. We had this experience with Brexit that drove also our need to create a new partner with whom we have to share our border. And this is something also that other countries around the world are doing. Britain is doing it, Singapore, Middle East. So more and more people are moving away from checking in an equal footing every consignment at the border to having systems that ensure that things are well controlled. This will also allow us to more and more expand from controlling the tariffs to controlling the prohibition, restrictions, characteristics of the goods, and facilitate the interaction with market surveillance authorities.
No, as you pointed out, this is not an upgrade. This is a new system. And in fact, the timeline that you're describing is rather fast. And it's an indication of the serious commitment that the member states have to making this change happen.
Well, I should probably clarify. The commitment is to make the first step of the system by 2028 for a new system for e-commerce, just a completely new system for e-commerce by 2028 at the latest. Potentially, we can do it earlier. But then for all trade, we will have more time to do it. And therefore, we will develop the completely new system in parallel to operating the current system. And then at some stage, we will switch. So by 2034.
Okay. One of your key talking points over time, and one of the things that you're recognized and celebrated for in the customs community, is that customs needs to be better equipped for the future, not running behind the evolving world, but staying ahead of the evolving world. Does DG Tax plan to engage in research per se, as U.S. Customs does? What role do you see being played in EU customs reform by universities, scientific institutes, and other research-oriented organizations?
I think we do that through the Horizon project. We have a system, hopefully, in the Commission also preaching for efficiency and effectiveness. It doesn't work very well if every department has its own research or other projects. So we have general rules for research and innovation under Horizon, and then we define different priorities within these general programs to deal with the issues that are relevant. That's the one thing. We do it through horizontal programs. Second, the second advantage of doing it through horizontal programs is that technology and innovation are not custom specific or tax specific or so. In fact, that is the challenge, to try to transfer the knowledge from other areas. I mean, in health, they are much more advanced in dealing with data than when they are in tax or customs. And I take an area that it is very national, so to speak. So I don't take areas where people share data, but in health ministries or in the health sector, the innovation is quite advanced. Artificial intelligence, it is developed faster in other areas. So when we want to bring the use of artificial intelligence on customs and tax systems, I'm not sure that we will find the best expertise among customs agencies and tax agencies. We have to transfer it from elsewhere. So the big advantage from working in the Commission through horizontal programs like Horizon is that we facilitate the spread of technology and innovation across sectors. Our society and these sciences move so fast that we cannot afford not to transfer innovation and technology from one sector to another. And for that matter, also to the private sector. The data hub is the biggest interface with the private sector that we will have for customs, and it has to be driven by the private sector and the needs of the private sector. That's why in the customs reform, we have a huge degree of engagement with the private sector. We have a regular trade contact group. We speak to private sector traders outside. We have a constant discussion with the private sector on what it is the right level of technology that matches their needs and their innovation.
Yeah, in fact, the PEN-CP, the Pan-European Network of Customs Practitioners, which is the Horizon Europe project that hosts this podcast, has a specific aim to accelerate customs innovation by building bridges between customs administrations on the one hand and private / semi-private research entities, universities, research institutes, and so on the other, and by building a strong network of forward-thinking practitioners within the customs community. Do you consider this sort of bridge building between public and private sectors to be an important part of the EU customs reform and an important part of what the EU brings to customs innovation?
Indeed, that's why I give this interview to you now. I think PEN-CP is an important example of these bridges between administrations, private, semi-private organizations. I think um, universities and institutes and startups, they need to have a space to look at applications that they have to do with these issues. And this is the right program and the right environment to bring these people together. There are other programs we could in the future devote through the Horizon program more priority to these issues. I think it is also important to have the civil society participate. A lot of the prohibition and restrictions are linked to civil society issues, whether it is forced labor or child labor or environmental issues. So it is important to have the oversight, let's say, of the civil society on this, both on the deployment of technology and innovation, but also on the finality of customs controls. So it is important to engage with them. And as always, given that we talked a lot about data, it is very important also to look at data protection. This is we need this particular angle, not only from the practical point of view on what the traders can share, will share, with whom they share, but also all the rules, and we are very extremely diligent with that in the European Union with GDPR, that we want to make sure that the data is adequately protected. This will be a challenge in the case of Data Hub. There are commercial sensitivities around the issues, but also there is the overall issue of data protection. So this is a big component of our work on preparation of the Data Hub and of the use of artificial intelligence or other technologies that will facilitate risk management.
That's extremely helpful. Yeah, the involvement of civil society and the burning issue of data protection has to be one of the key elements of any successful project of this nature. The Horizon Europe platform is a wonderful sort of test bed for creating innovation. Part of that, I guess, is also building a network of practitioners, and in this case, practitioners in the customs community, to share knowledge and experience and best practices among the different customs agencies. Is that another element of your forward-facing attitude to support the development of a network of practitioners?
We have first of all an institutional group. We call it the Trade Contact Group. This brings together representatives from these areas with whom we discuss and we scrutinize every proposal or the guidelines that have to be issued following adoption of legal texts. Then every member state in the EU has its own, let's say, at the national level, interaction with the trade and private sector practitioners, whether they are logistic companies, transport companies, the customs brokers, the customs representatives, the ecosystem, and a lot of the technology companies. And this is somehow transferred to the European level. So it is very important to look at this ecosystem and make sure that they all are in sync with the reforms that are needed in order to deal with the political priorities and the needs of the society. This cannot be done by having administration talking to each other alone. This cannot be done by only bringing the national and the federal level. We need to bring, the public, private sector, and the social. Now, some of the private sector practitioners are more involved, as it happens in any business. Some they are more advanced in technology and innovation. You need to learn from them. At the same time, we cannot adopt, let's say, at the government level, we cannot adopt proprietary system of the one or the other operator. Sure. It is the same happens in capital markets, or it happens in energy. You need to stimulate innovation. On the other hand, you cannot impose one, let's say, private actor systems to everybody else. So in Europe also we have a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises. So we need to have a system that it is cost efficient also for small companies and not only cater to the needs of one or the other very big players. Some people think that the fact that we have SMEs, small companies, it is against, let's say, the idea of introducing a lot of technology. We found statistically that the small companies are much more prone to digitalization and simplification than a lot of the big companies. So I think it is very important for us to think of small companies, to think of cost-efficient solutions. But I think I don't want the listeners to remain with an impression that small companies are not open to digitalization or new data systems. In fact, a lot of times they are much more flexible and see much more the value of replacing old administrative procedures with new modern data systems.
That's a very, very important point to make. But not talking about small and medium for a minute, talking about gargantuan. I've always been puzzled by the fact that I looked at the, IBM Maersk blockchain effort, TradeLens, which was widely hailed as an important kind of paradigm shift reform in customs practice. And yet it failed to gain traction and was discontinued. Are there any useful lessons learned from this exercise? Does the failure of this initiative say something about the nature of EU customs and point the way to successful EU customs reform?
I cannot comment on individual issues, but I think we cannot use and impose to everybody a specific technology. And I think we need to have competition about technologies, but we need to have an open architecture. So there is, a lot of research has to be done at the level of the UN Center for Trade Facilitation, at the level of the WCO and everywhere on how we can profit, let's say, from specific proprietary technologies, but at the same time create technologies that are open for all. I think that is very important, and we argued to embrace new technologies, but without sort of embracing a single specific technology that it is proprietary to certain companies, which then will profit from this. We don't want this to happen either with the European or a non-European technologies. In fact, innovation is driven by competition around solutions that can be multiplied by different vendors and different actors. And I think that is, our goal. As a legislator for the customs processes and we are not ourselves speaking the technology. We create the environment. And then I think for the moment, the member states, but tomorrow, all the member states together around the customs, single European customs authority, they will decide what is the appropriate technology that will fit the small, the big players, the logistics companies, but the e-commerce companies, the platforms, etc. We see, if we look at the positive side of e-commerce, because I mentioned the increase in transaction, but platforms, whether in e-commerce or in services, has driven a lot of innovation, and therefore we need to have open systems by which data, which is the new currency for trade, they will be able to serve the customers and serve also the authorities in ensuring compliance.
Data is the new currency for trade. I like that. That's a very, very good, that's a punchy phrase and absolutely on the money. That data and availability of data it will make or break many systems. Your mention of open architecture, non-proprietary, and an overarching trust in the system that all the players will believe this is open to them. It's an level playing field. There's no favorites being played. Perhaps, and I'm just speculating here, I don't know, but perhaps the IBM Maersk thing was perceived as being, if not really, driven by the agendas of the companies rather than driven by the common good, which is what your program is doing.
I don't pass a judgment that I think they're still used as a system in other parts of the world, so it will be one system and more others. It cannot be the only system.
Coming back to the Horizon Europe, and I'm really interested in your stress on that as a sort of the microcosm or the environment in which both innovation and collaboration between public and private should happen. Do you have a sort of an ideal world contribution that Horizon Europe projects could make to customs innovation and customs reform? What would you look to Horizon Europe projects to do?
I think data and risk management is now on the top of the agenda, given that we propose, let's say, to move to the new frontier. I think the second area is around detection technologies. So there is a new whole war on drugs here, which is partly fought by customs authorities, but also by other authorities. We have launched the Ports Alliance initiative, which is brings together all the authorities that could be having a role in fighting drugs in Europe, that it is spreading very much. And therefore, detection technologies is a new area where we can benefit from, a lot of technology improvements in scanners, in sniffing, in artificial intelligence, in imaging technologies. And then the third area is laboratory equipment. We need, at the end of the day, a lot of the enforcement depends on the capacity to test substances, whether it is drug precursors that arrive, in the forms of chemicals and transformed into drugs, or whether it is about, the environmental characteristics of certain goods, about the safety of children toys, or the safety of beauty cosmetics from all over the world. And therefore you need to have some laboratory capacity, to be able to test things quickly. So there are many activities that are serving the whole, not only customs, but what we call market surveillance authorities, police, other enforcement authorities, to do things efficiently and effectively without hindering trade. And therefore, technology can play a big, very important role. A lot of this, of course, can be dealt upstream. So this new combination of sharing data at the border, but sharing data at the moment of the manufacturing and before the product is traded, it's very important to keep the smooth trade. And we need a smooth trade all over the world in order to spread the good technologies worldwide.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there a parting thought or something you'd like to leave the listeners with? Is there something I've left out of our conversation that you'd like to add?
I think this is important to embrace the change, and this is a change that has an impact on all the goods that we are using in our society. I think there is a lot of behavioral change that is needed because of our necessity to reduce CO2 emissions, because of our necessity to review the geopolitical risks that unfortunately are developing. And therefore, I think it is important to use the wider community of traders, researchers, scientists, civil society, in order to see what is the most efficient way to do this. And we need to work together.
Wonderful. Combination of teamwork of public and private, for outward facing and inward facing. That's definitely the aim of PenCP and other Horizon projects.
Don't resist change.
Don't resist change, or you will be carried away by it, right?
If you resist change, you will be totally ineffective in this area.
Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time yourself.
This concludes my two-part Pencast conversation with Gerassimos Thomas, Director General of the European Commission's Taxation and Customs Union Directorate. Tune in soon for another conversation with customs innovators, leaders, and trendsetters. Thank you.